ever wonder how you got here? I mean, believe me, I wonder. No, I really wonder, why are you here? Let's get to it. Welcome. Another fabulous episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your still trying to figure all this out host, Eric Wilson. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks for the follows and subscribes. Find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you get this podcast. I know 2/3 of you out there are listening to me and missing this face. I get it. I would too. But you can follow me there as well. So follow me wherever you get this podcast. I want to thank Arkiva for driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. Thank you, Arkiva, for being a marvelous sponsor for all these years. Year 5 now we're going into. This is insane. So in May, we're going to be online. So if you're not coming out to conferences and you really want to just be at home in your pajamas, I don't judge. You're watching me right now. You can actually, in May, we have a whole online conferences. We have like 5 different one-day master classes: demand, supply, S&OP, a CPF kind of starter or boot camp for you, that one-day crash course, whatever it may be. Check it out at ibf.org. There's a lot of ways you can actually go to all 5, just individual, what you want to check out. And I said, there's a lot of other great content at ibf.org as well. Everyone really gets to where they're at really by accident. I mean, if you look, especially people are in demand planning roles, and we go to conferences and you ask, how did you get to this role? Everyone ends up getting to where in demand planning or some other type of role by accident. So really, when you look at what makes a good demand planner, or what makes a good S&OP champion, really, it depends is a good answer. We find a lot of paths and no really one clear path to get there. If you look at S&OP, S&OP is a cross-functional by nature. Great leaders come from various backgrounds. The best S&OP professionals have a blend of analytical, but also strategic and very communication, the soft skills, collaborative skills, those skills as well. Core traits of successful S&OP leaders based on IBF research is strong communication and collaboration skills. Number 1 always comes up. Have that big picture mindset, a business acumen, but also very comfortable with ambiguity. Which is why a lot of times, in my personal opinion, why engineering, supply type roles, they don't do as well because of that being comfortable with ambiguity. You want to be, partly right instead of precisely correct, wrong, whatever the saying is. Close enough is close enough a lot of times in our field. And this is why non-traditional and sometimes financial roles do well. That's the reason I'm bringing in today's guest, to have a little talk about that transition from finance to an S&OP role. Sergio is an experienced sales and operations planning leader focused on creating value to large manufacturing and other organizations. He's an associate director, plasma supply chain planning, and he's actually started his career as an FP&A manager. He has a financial planning background combined with commercial expertise, which makes it natural to lead, in his opinion, the sales and operations planning function in his organization. Let's talk a little bit about that and see what you think. Please help me welcome Sergio. Welcome, Sergio. I'm excited to have you be part of this podcast. So welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Pleasure and honor to be here with you.
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I think we talked just a few weeks ago. We actually talked in reference to my new book. You're giving me some great insights from not only Brazil and Latin America, but U.S. then as well, and some other regions. You gave me some great perspectives to be able to, and stories to bring into my book as well. So thank you for working on that, and I'm going to definitely keep you informed as I go through this journey of writing the book. But I want to thank you for your insights you have.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be part of that, and I'm looking very forward to see the book and the results of it. And again, glad to contribute any more if needed.
Yep. Well, today specifically, we're bringing you in to really talk about, an S&OP champion, and really what makes a good S&OP leader and someone to really run an S&OP process, and more so your kind of career path from finance, controller, really to your current role now, and kind of how you bridge that gap. And that's really what we wanted to talk about today. I mean, I always joke that everyone gets to these roles by accident. Well, currently, what is your current role, and what's kind of your background?
Yep. So right now, I'm actually leading a supply planning organization for a pharmaceutical company. So my responsibility is to make sure that we have the key raw material for medicine production in our warehouse so that we can distribute that to the production sites in a timely manner. But prior to that, I have been in other planning functions, and I have been with the planning organization for about 7 years now. And it's funny what you said that sometimes we get there by accident, right? So I don't have any background in supply chain whatsoever. So my background is in finance. I'm an accountant, and I had most of my career in the finance organization as a controller, uh, business partner, to say. But the funny thing is that I was controller, and we work very close with supply chain and other sides of the organization. And there was a need within my organization to develop the S&OP function for a business area. And they were trying to recruit someone who would understand planning, who would understand the business, and who would understand the company. And it's really hard to find all those competence when you are looking outside the organization. So they came to me and said, okay, you know the business, you know the finance, you know planning. You might not know the supply chain side of that. Would like to give it a try. And I said, yes, why not? So I took up the challenge of building the S&OP organization there. So I had to learn from scratch at that time. But within a couple of months, I was able to implement S&OP for that business area, and it was successful. So I was very glad that I could bring my finance background, my financial planning background into supply chain and make things happen there.
So, Gloria, then how is your finance and controller, accounting background? How did that influence your approach into S&OP? Or was it a little bit different, or how did it really influence that approach?
Yeah, I mean, finance and supply have to go hand in hand, right? I mean, if you have the ability to talk the same language to different kind of people with the operations team, with the supply chain organization, and with the finance organization, you are ahead of the curve. You can actually accomplish a lot more if you simply speak the same language. And I think that's the biggest benefit that I have. I can go to finance and talk, financial stuff. I can talk P&L. I can talk balance sheet. I can talk inventory, accounting, and all sort of those dynamics from finance, and at the same time translate that to real life per se in the supply chain organization. So when you have that ability to talk the same language, I think that's very beneficial, and you can support both sides of the organization. I have an example in my previous job where I was actually leading the demand planning organization, and we have a responsibility for over inventory levels. And finance was always complaining that the demand planning team didn't understand why inventories were high, what was the implication in the books of the inventory levels that they had, scrap, and so forth. So I came into that role and I start having direct interaction with finance and discussing what we were seeing from the supply side and what they were seeing from the finance side, and then we start putting things together. And after a while, finance said, "Well, now we understand your point of view. You understand our point of view. So we are all happy. We are always all going to the same direction." So again, I think for me that's the biggest gain and a good benefit of understanding both sides.
Okay. So that kind of is what helped you as far as what influenced your approach. At the same time, what were some of the biggest challenges, or what made it a little more difficult coming from a role where you didn't know supply chain or S&OP, or really from accounting to a planning type role? What were some of the big challenges you had?
I think again, everything that is new is a challenge, right? So I didn't know all the ins and outs of supply chain. When you're looking from a finance perspective, you are look at numbers and what is most beneficial for the company, right? You're looking at your P&L, you look at you know, the financial statements, and you want to make sure that everything is correct, accurate, but you are also bringing the best benefit to the company. You don't have so much uh, responsibility on the numbers per se. You are reporting numbers in the finance. When you go into the supply chain, you do have a bigger responsibility because what you're reporting is up to you. If you're losing, if you're increasing inventory, it's not just you cannot just say, okay, the inventories are high because we are good inventory. You need to explain why it is. If you are scrapping or if you're losing product by expiration or something, it's not just say, okay, yeah, the supply chain is increasing with scrap. No, you have that responsibility of uh, uh, why it's happening, and you have more control on your hands. And I think for me, the challenge was, going, and it's not like about pointing fingers whatsoever, but now you have the responsibility for what is going on. It's a great responsibility, but it's a challenge as well because now you see you have the control. You have to make sure that you are impacting those numbers to, in the best way, right? So you need to make sure that your organization, everyone behind you, is actually working with the same objective of making the numbers, not just the numbers, but the inventories to the targets that we have, or production output to the targets that we have. So you need to make sure that not what you report is accurate, but it's the level that you need, right? What is good for the company. So I think that was the biggest change for me. I'm not saying a challenge, but the change was going from a reporting point of view to a controlling or ownership point of view, and taking responsibility and taking actions for what is going on in the supply chain organization.
Okay. So going from reporting to an ownership, but also if you're looking at it, from a controller accounting, it's there's a lot less ambiguity in there. The numbers say the numbers, they balance, and it's more reactive versus a planning type of role where you have a lot more ambiguity. It's a lot more strategic. Was that? I mean, how did you bridge that gap between going from very, executional, no ambiguity, to a planning, a lot of ambiguity? Was that really a challenge to have to kind of change a mindset?
Yeah, I think when you think about the planning ahead and ambiguity, uh, I would say both finance and supply chain have that. It depends on where you are actually the scope of your plan, right? If you're looking at financial accounting reporting as actual, then you're right. I mean, it's there is no ambiguity. It's what happened here. It's what we are reporting. But you're also looking at projections, long range forecast and planning, business case simulation and stuff like that. So I was used to that in a way as well from my financial background, and we were doing planning long term. So you're just guessing, or you have a lot of assumptions, assumptions, but at the end of the day, it can go both ways, right? The important thing there is to have your assumptions right, and that's the best you can do. So, and in the supply chain, it's the same. When you're looking at the S&OP, if you're looking at execution, that's not so much variation. It's more like, okay, what can you do to make sure that you meet your targets, your numbers in the short term? But when you are looking at the forecasting for 12, 18, 24 months, that's where things start to get a little bit blurry. And okay, I mean, how can you predict if there will be a supply chain crisis or if there will be a raw material shortage, like a port strike, like we had a couple of months ago, and all things like that. It's really challenging in the sense that you don't have a lot of control on that, but you need to have your assumptions right, right? Make sure that you, to the best of your knowledge, you create a list of assumptions, you follow that, you implement that into your plan, and then you keep following up to see, okay, what are the assumptions that I had that really materialized and the ones that didn't materialize, and then you keep control on that, and you try every day to make it better, and just keep track of those assumptions.
Yeah. I mean, right now in the world of tariffs, and we don't know who's going to own the Panama Canal, and all these things. I mean, we have a lot of uncertainty right now. We have to deal with.
Exactly.
So, with many companies, they still separate out the roles of the financial planning, FP&A type of roles, and an S&OP or even IBP roles. They still have those silos between the two different processes. Is this a problem, and is there a risk of misalignment? And do you always see those two becoming kind of one process now?
Yes. It's hard to say if it's a problem or not. I think it really depends on the business where you are. My opinion, and that's my personal opinion, because I have been in both sides. So I have been a company where we have almost completely. It's really hard to be complete aligned, but let's say 99% alignment between finance and operations. And I have been in companies where we have two different processes. We have a financial process and we have an S&OP LVP operational process. Uh, the, the first one, the benefit of having an alignment process is that you uh, you save on resource for the company, and the integration of that process is very important for or very beneficial for the organization. So we did that in our previous organization a couple of years ago, where we aligned the financial and operations S&OP process. And the benefit of that is that there is a very close interaction between commercial, between operations, and between finance. So now there is not finance talking to commercial to understand the revenue budget, and then finance talking to operations to say, okay, how much should be my operational budget. Now the three organizations are sitting together. So I have a demand planner who works with commercial, and it's fully aligned with the supply planner who is working with the operation, and finance is sitting with them on the same table. So they are looking at that and making one plan. So everyone is working in the same direction. When we are talking about finance on that plan, we are talking about volume and revenue or volume and cost. It's not just finance looking at dollars and commercial and operation talking about volume or anything or the like. So it's beneficial because you have one process, you have one set of numbers, you have everyone going in the same direction with the same objective. Now,
Okay.
another organization where we have two different processes, supply chain IBP is mostly looking at volume. So, I mean, we need those targets in volume. This is what we have to deliver. Of course, there is cost. We need to do everything based on the least cost possible, but there is no direct link to the revenue. So when the commercial team is looking, they are looking at their revenue targets, not necessarily to the volume. So there is a disconnect there. And when you try to reconcile things, you end up spending more time and more resource reconciling your commercial budget, revenue budget with your operation volume than if you have one combined process. So again, it really depends on the organization. Where I am right now, revenue recognition is really difficult because it's not necessarily tied to volume. There is a lot of other components of that, so it becomes a little bit more challenging to have one process that integrates everything. That's why I say it really depends on the business. Sometimes it's much better to have one process. Sometimes you have to have two different processes. But if you have two different processes, my recommendation is that you try to make them as aligned as possible to benefit both sides of the organization.
Okay. And you said it depends on the company, but I think it depends on the individual kind of championing or kind of leading the S&OP process then as well. I mean, and that's your role there as well, is you brought on board from a finance and supply chain to really organize and run an S&OP process. So with that, from your experience, your opinion, I mean, what role does that S&OP champion or the S&OP leader really play in an effective S&OP process and bringing finance, bringing sales, bringing operation, bringing people together? What role does that champion or the leader play in an S&OP process?
It's a very important role to start with, right? I mean, everyone who has been involved in this we will understand that the champion is kind of a key person in that process. I think the first role is to make sure that everyone understands the process, right? And it's not. I think one element that I saw in my experience is that when you are trying to implement this, it depends on where that person is sitting. The other sides of the organization will say, okay, if this is a supply chain process, or this is a finance process, or this is something else process, right? It depends on that where that champion is sitting. And I'm not saying what is the right place for that person to sit, but the key element and the most important element for that champion is to say this is not a functional role. It's an enterprise. It's a company-wide role. So it's important for everyone. So it's called IBP, integrated business planning. So it's for the whole company. And for me, the most important thing is to have the engagement from the top. So you need to have your high level senior leadership engaged with that. Because if they are not engaged, if they don't understand the benefit and the importance of this process, it's not going to cascade down, and the teams under them will not participate as they should. So when we implement that in another organization, we made sure that all the presidents, the VPs, and everyone that was involved in this process, they would be engaged and they would give the clear direction to their organization, saying you need to focus on this, you need to integrate, you need to make sure that you participate in the process right. So the champion is actually have that role to communicate with the different levels of the organization and make sure that this is a united process. And it's not a finance or it's not a supply chain or operational process, but a company-wide element that needs to be implemented.
Well, in our last minute, kind of the final question then I have for you is people who are in the S&OP champion, leading an S&OP process, kind of, what you used in your transition. So for new people out there wondering, what do I need? What kind of skills do you think are most important in those type of roles that they need to really start developing now to really be where you are in the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah. I think communication, Eric, is a key element here. Again, IBP is a lot about communicating and making sure that people are aligned on the plans and most importantly on the objective, on the goals of the company, right? So if you cannot communicate with the different sides of the organization, you cannot create that alignment with different people, it's going to be really hard to succeed. So I would say, first of all, you need to make sure that you engage with people, you understand their needs, most importantly, you understand the corporate or the company objective, and you try to make that alignment. And then second, be open to ideas, be open to people's needs. I think, of course, we have some guidelines for IBP S&OP, but it should not be a square box that you have to follow exactly that. So you need to understand the core and be able to implement to the best of your knowledge the different elements according to the organization, according to the people that are part of that, right? So kind of uh, model the structure into the organization. So for me, it would be that. I mean, first, communicate well, but also have that flexibility and that way of working with different people to make sure that you mold that process to the best of the organization.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that was definitely some insights, and congratulations on your career path. Welcome to the dark side of S&OP from finance. So welcome. So I'm excited. So thank you for sharing your insights, and I'm sure I'm going to see you at a future conference.
We will. Thank you so much, Eric, and all the best to you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
As I mentioned, very beginning, that's one example. Finance to S&OP is one example. There's a lot of other non-traditional career paths into S&OP. While many enter S&OP from traditional supply chain, we do see that. Other transitions from sales, commercial side of the business, consulting, finance, and other types of roles, marketing, we see those roles actually be able to transition into S&OP. Commercial professionals, they bring a strong customer and market insights. They really have a customer-focused and enterprise-focused type, with their being able to bridge the gap between commercial teams and supply and other parts of the organization. They sometimes bring a good business acumen with them as well. Operational professionals, they bring strong efficiencies, process controls. They bring those skill sets. Consulting and strategic type roles, those backgrounds bring business strategy, really that entrepreneurial type mindset. They have experience in problem solving, aligning different business functions together, which is really key in S&OP as well. So no matter what role, we can really see bringing some of the skill sets from that function can help really lean into that and build a better S&OP champion. Ultimately, the skills we need to become a better S&OP champion, they include cross-functional leadership, the ability to really engage teams no matter what function you're in. There is a sense of data literacy. Data is really driving force to a lot of good S&OP processes, where the latency of the data, the visibility in the data, the accuracy of the data. So having a data latency and understanding different types of data, different types of forecasting, supply models, marketing models, financial models, business intelligence tools, having the ability to understand that data is important. Having really that strategic thinking, balancing not only the short-term execution, but the long-term business strategies and planning of the organization as well. Having that big picture view is one of the things that we really see and needed in a good S&OP champion. And then change management. Change management is a lot of times overlooked, but an important aspect. You're really driving a bus. You're driving a process. And it's continuously literally incremental improvements that really need to impact all functions, which is really change management needs to be a driving force of that as well for adoption and continuous improvement. Well, that's a wrap. I'm going to go see if I can fix my karma and find something else I can do. My name is Eric. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks for Arkiva, driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. Thank you very much, Arkiva. Remember, in May, we're going to be online the entire month. So check out ibf.org for all the different events you can check out from me and other subject matter experts that are presenting online different types of training during the month of May, ibf.org. There's a lot of other content out there as well. Don't forget to find me on LinkedIn, Find me on YouTube, IBF On Demand, either where you look at. There's tons of great content out there at both sites. And remember, forget about it. If you made it this far in the podcast, you know what's going to come next. So don't forget, wash your hands.